Weariness is a dangerous place to be, but weary faith is still faith. And we learn this from King David. David, a man after God's own heart, struggled with weariness. You see, for 10 years, King Saul had been chasing him. For 10 years, David was running. And not just running, but he's running with responsibility of about 400 men. For 10 years, David does the right thing. For 10 years, David gives Saul mercy. For 10 years, David protects people that end up betraying him. It's a cycle, and David is getting exhausted. Weariness settles in deep, and he says to God in the Psalms, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me? How long must I carry sorrow in my heart all day?" And it is here that David makes a decision he never thought he would make. David leaves the land of Israel, the land of his people, the land of God's promise, and he goes to live with the enemy, the Philistines. Now, if you remember the Philistines, these are Goliath's people, as in Goliath the giant that David slayed and called ungodly. David is now living with the godless. And chances are that, like David, you'll just try to make this period work. At this point, you're desperate. So David negotiated with one of the Philistine kings, and the king gave him a small little village called Ziklag. And in that village, David builds a community for about a year. Him and his 400 men get farm animals, some get married, they have children. It becomes a community. And David even tries to still fulfill some sort of purpose, because Ziklag, where David's new community was, neighbored the Amalekites. The Amalekites were fighting the Israelites, and so David would attack them from the south, making it harder for them to attack the Israelites. For David, he was still trying to live out his purpose. It's noble, but it's not what God anointed him to do. And so God allows disaster to fall on Ziklag, not because he's angry, but because he's calling David back to himself. And what happens is David's community is raided, his people's families and children are kidnapped, and it's at this breaking point when he can't even have a little piece of hope that he built for himself on compromised ground, that David does something he hasn't done in a while. He seeks the Lord. Scripture says David strengthened himself in God. Being left with nothing, he decides to return back to God. And it's encouraging to us because we know that even King David, a man after God's own heart, had a weary, dry spiritual season. He grew weary and tired and he compromised. But that didn't mean that God wasn't there, that God wasn't waiting on David. And what David doesn't know is the throne is about to become his. But before he knows that, the Lord meets him and he restores David. And so what comes out of this 10-year wilderness period is not just a future king, but a different type of king. A king who knows how to seek the Lord. A king who knows how to come back to God. David already knew how to win before he entered the wilderness, but what he learned now was how to lose and return.